this is She's Making Something, and a few years ago I made this flower basket cake for my mom for her birthday. I was super proud of it. It's one of my favorites. And now that a few years have passed and I have learned and practiced some more, I thought I would recreate it using new techniques in gorgeous red and yellow colors for fall. So follow along and I'll show you how I did it. So for this cake, I'm using 8-inch round layers, devil's food, because that's my favorite and this cake is for me, vanilla American buttercream, and a strawberry jam filling. Knowing that there's going to be a lot of frosting on top of this cake, I only added a thin layer of buttercream under the jam to help give some structure in the middle so the jam doesn't just squish into the cake and disappear. I did not level off my top layer because I wanted my flowers to have a dome shape to them so there was some dimension and they weren't just lying flat on top of the cake. And I didn't want to pile buttercream on top to create that shape and then add the flowers on top of that. It's just too much frosting for my taste, and it made more sense to let some of that dome shape be the delicious cake. Plus, it saved me an extra step or two. The crumb coat doesn't have to be perfectly smooth because I'm covering it with a piping technique, but once the crumb coat is done, it goes in the fridge for 30 minutes to chill, and then it's ready to turn into a basket. I'm using a weave tip which is smooth on one side and serrated on the other and was made exactly for this technique. A basket weave is actually pretty simple to do. It's just vertical lines and then alternating shorter horizontal lines. But there are a few small details that help it go smoother and look a little more polished, like making sure that the gaps between the lines and the lines themselves are the same size. And then make sure that the next vertical line goes over the edge of the previous horizontal ones. And when filling in the gaps, make sure to stick the tip a little under the vertical line to help give that over-under basket weave look. I'm not gonna lie, this piping technique takes forever. My hand was cramping before I was even a quarter of the way done, and I had to take quite a few breaks to shake my hands out so I could keep going. Overall, it took me about 20 minutes to pipe this pattern around the entire cake. There are some gaps in between my lines, which makes it look more like a rustic open weave basket compared to a tighter, more compacted weave basket. I think the open weave adds some shadow and depth and makes it look a little more informal, if that's a thing, to match the wicker-like handles I'm gonna make for my basket. I think the tighter, more compact weave looks slightly more uptight and formal, if that's even a thing for basket cakes. To finish off the basket look, I'm going to use a French star piping tip and add a braid type effect around the top and a finished edge around the bottom. I know that most of this braid is going to be covered with flowers, so I questioned taking the time to do it, but I personally felt like I needed a completed basket to fill with flowers instead of using the flowers to cover up the messy edges, because that's how my brain works. So now it's time to pipe some flowers, and I'm still learning and practicing piping flowers, so my strategy for this cake is to pipe way more flowers than I need and then pick and choose the ones that turned out well enough to put on the cake. I started by piping some drop flowers using a closed star tip because those are the simplest and I've done them many times before. It's really easy to do, just squeeze, twist, and what pops out is this beautiful little flower, and it's adorable. And then using a large round tip, I added some yellow centers, sticking to the fall color scheme of red, orange, and yellow. So this is my first time using a flower nail, and I'm attempting some roses using a two-tone buttercream. I think they turned out pretty well for a beginner, but they're still a little flat and two-dimensional, and I think next time I'll add a small buttercream pile before I start piping to give it a taller, more 3D shape. I tried sticking to my mother's flower shop wisdom of working in odd numbers, making 3, 5, or 7 flowers, because that makes bouquets look more natural. But like I said before, my plan is to make way more flowers than needed so I can get some extra practice in and have more chances of some of my flowers turning out decent. I originally wanted to make sunflowers, but the consistency of my buttercream wasn't perfect, and I was having difficulty getting the leaf tip to look how I wanted, so I changed my plans and just made something up. I have no idea what type of flower these yellow things might come close to representing, but I like the texture and the color, and they worked for me. Similar to the drop flowers, I tried to make some simple 5-petal flowers using a petal tip, but I had difficulty getting all the petals to be even, and the drop flowers are just a much easier way to get a similar look. But I like the bright orange, and it was nice to practice. So I felt like I needed a darker color to help balance out my basket, so I mixed a little purple with my red and made a deeper burgundy color and then piped some more roses. My buttercream was warming up in my hands, which made these roses a little softer, and they had a slightly different look to them, but I think they turned out pretty well. I then made some mini dahlia-like flowers, and I have never used this type of tip before, and it is not my favorite to work with. I just found it more finicky and hard to manage, but I like the height and the texture of these little flowers, so I made some in the darker burgundy color, and then I made some more in the yellow. So using the leftover burgundy with a little bit of yellow in the center, I made a bunch of smaller 2-tone drop flowers, which my daughter said were her favorite. After piping the first flower, I went back in and piped a second layer to give them some more fluff and fullness. The idea being that these smaller flowers would be used as filler. After my flowers were done, they all went into the freezer to harden up before I put them on the cake. This way I can just pick them up and plop them on the cake where I want, and because they're so hard, I can rearrange, take some off, move them around without messing them up, which is helpful for someone like me who tends to just make it up as I go. So I'm piling the flowers on top of the cake, trying to lay out the colors and textures in a way that looks good to me. I did accidentally bury a few in the process, but once it looks full enough, it's time for the magic of the leaves. So using a moss green buttercream and a standard leaf tip, I fill in all the gaps, mistakes, and edges. I just love how adding some green leaves gives the flowers life and really helps pull the whole look together. Because there are different types of flowers, there should be different types of leaves. So I made some straight and some ruffly, and what I really should have done was use different size leaf tips to also give more variety. For this basket, I decided to add some handles. but I made using food-safe wire and white gum paste. I made a really, really long snake and just wrapped it over and over and over around the wire. Gum paste dries really fast, so I had problems with cracking near the end, but some edible glue, which is just gum paste dissolved in hot water, helped patch up some of the bigger problems. I also added some glue in the grooves of the handle so that as it dries, it is less likely to untwist and loosen up. I did make my handles a little too big for the size of the cake, and so after they dried and hardened, I snipped the ends and slid them off the wire, which gave me more wire to stick in the cake as a bonus. When I went to put the handles in the cake, I realized that pure white gum paste and off-white buttercream do not match. So in the future, I'll remember to either brighten up my buttercream or yellow up my gum paste so their tones match a little better. And that's it, my autumn flower basket cake. I really liked how it turned out, and then I gave myself the chance to try and learn new things. And in a few years, maybe I'll do it again to see how far I've come. Thanks for watching. Give me a like and a subscribe to see more of my projects in the future.